I am just starting the last chapter of Stephen Runciman's The Kingdom of Jerusalem, which is the second volume in his Crusade trilogy. The book is divided into 5 parts, and there is a paragraph which closes out part 4, which I keep referring back to in my mind. I think it sets the tone for the rest of the volume, pertaining to the death of the king Amalric, whose son Baldwin IV, the leper king, succeeded him and is, I believe, about to die at the juncture at which I find myself now. But this is what Runciman has to say about Amalric after his death. If history is only a matter of challenge and response, then the growth of Muslim unity under Zengi, Nur ad-Din, and Saladin was the inevitable reaction to the First Crusade. But fate too often capriciously loads the dice. At the beginning of 1174, Saladin's star seemed to be setting. The death of Nur ad-Din and the death of Amalric, neither of them expected, saved him and opened the gateway for his victories to come. For the Franks of the East, the death of Amalric at such a moment, and the accidents that had befallen his family, foreboded the end of their kingdom. Amalric was the last king of Christian Jerusalem worthy of his throne. He had made mistakes. He had been swayed by the enthusiasm of his nobles in 1168 and by their hesitations in 1169. He had been too ready to accept gifts of money, which his government needed for the moment, rather than carry out a policy far-sightedly. But his energy and his enterprise had been boundless. He had shown that neither his vassals nor the orders could defy him unscathed. Had he lived longer, he might have challenged the inevitability of the triumph of Islam. This is really my first introduction to the Middle Ages or the medieval world at all, and so with this focus on Jerusalem and the Crusades, I feel that I'm sort of approaching it through the back door, which is typically how I get my history regardless. Perhaps after this, at some point, I will be ready to read a history of medieval Europe. I've had one that I've been curious about for probably 40 years, but was unable to penetrate. Now I might have the wherewithal to go into it. But that paragraph really captures an essence, I think, both in the case of Jerusalem and the region, even the Byzantine kingdom, captures a sense of how much is dependent upon the individual actors in the drama. And life, or death, I should say, could come to anybody suddenly, take anybody out suddenly, and change the entire course of events. As I say, hitherto you have the Christians in one sort of sphere interacting amongst themselves, and then peripherally acting with or against the Muslim populations. But you also have a sense of the Muslim world with a multitude of different actors acting amongst themselves. And again, with one side as with the other, it's these individual fiefdoms or individual kingdoms individual royal personages, and actions-wise, there is not much to distinguish them. Everything is haphazard. Promises are made. Sometimes promises are kept. Sometimes they are not kept, and so forth. And the alignments that one makes with the other, either with co-religionists or across religious lines, really responds to exigencies of the moment, and these alliances shift at the drop of a hat. And so it's been very enlightening. Now, I've read one chapter subsequent to the paragraph which I just read, and at this point, the kingdom of Jerusalem, if you will, has become very factionalized, and all of the names of all of the actors in this saga have become too hard for me to keep track of at this point. You had early on a couple of really good Baldwins, Baldwin I and Baldwin II, and then even Baldwin III seemed pretty good. Then Amalric, and now his son Baldwin IV, who is almost more of a shadow figure. And after that, I think it's just more or less a bunch of, I can't think of the right word. I want to say non-entities, but that's not the right word. Supernumeraries is not the right word, but just a whole mess of petty, petty nobles, if you will, just trying to hold on to whatever they have, or trying to get out of it, by saving their skin, one way or the other. There have been nobles from Europe come purportedly to make marriage alliances, and the locals have tried to draw them into, as the old crusaders, draw them into their conflicts, and they've bowed out of the obligation or the putative ordeal. And it's just really remarkable. And Runciman continues his narrative so crisp and clear as a Hollywood movie. I mean, it's how I started the first book thinking, and his style continues to be very lucid. So that's where I have gotten. I'm not sure if I will finish this book tonight. I'm pretty sleepy, and I had, let's say, a beverage, which I perhaps should not have had this evening. So that's kind of put me out of commission somewhat. But heaven willing, tomorrow I shall finish this book and then move into volume 2 of Alexander Solzhenitsyn, which, again, I'm not sure about, but I will give it a good shot. Anyhow, that's where I stand at this point with the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Thank you very much for stopping by.